These are 3 true diner horror stories that'll make you think twice before stopping for coffee at night.
I live in the Pacific Northwest, the kind of place where fog hangs low on the highway and the woods always look a little too dark, even in the daylight. A few years back, I worked as a waitress at a small diner just off a 2-lane stretch of road about 30 minutes outside of town. It was in T, the kind of place you notice unless you needed gas or coffee at 1 a.m. We closed at 2 in the morning, but sometimes customers would wander in a few minutes before that. My boss didn't like it, but he also didn't like turning people away. So it usually fell on Mitha, closing waitress to serve whoever walked through those doors last. That night, it was raining lightly, and the neon open sign buzzed faintly in the window. It was just me and the cook in the back, cleaning up and waiting for the clock to hit 2. The diner was empty, quiet except for the hum of the refrigerators and the occasional car passing on the wet highway. Then, right at 1:50 a.m., the bell above the door jingled. A man stepped inside. Looked to be in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. A heavy-set guy wearing jeans pulled up too high, a tucked-in gray shirt, and a worn brown jacket. He had a thick mustache and those old wireframe glasses that reflected every bit of light. He smiled a little too wide and asked if I was still serving. Technically, for the next 10 minutes, I said, trying to sound polite. He chuckled, like we were sharing some kind of inside joke. Guess I made it just in time, huh? I led him to a booth near the window, handed him a menu, and told him the kitchen was closing soon. He didn't even look at the menu for long, just said he wanted black coffee and French toast. Simple enough. While the cook got his order started, I tried to stay busy wiping down the counters, stacking plates, anything to pass the time. But when I came back to refill his coffee, he started talking. "You from around here?" he asked, his tone casual, but his eyes locked on me. I nodded. "Yeah, born a few towns over. Nice area," he said. "Quiet. People seem friendly." I smiled politely. He laughed again, that weird forced laugh. "I just moved out here, actually. Figured I'd get away from the city. Too much noise, too many people. Out here it's peaceful." He kept talking, drifting from topic to topic, the weather, the roads, even the coffee. I answered out of courtesy, but I was tired. It was late, and something about him felt. Maybe it was the way he stared too long after each sentence, or the way his smile never quite reached his eyes. When his food was ready, I dropped it off and went back behind the counter. He ate slowly, glancing up at me every few bites. The clock above the register ticked past 2. I just wanted him to finish and leave. Finally, he placed his fork down and waved me over. I brought him the check before he could ask. He paid by card, thanked me, and wished me a good night. Nothing unusual until I stepped outside. The parking lot was nearly empty, except for 3 cars mine, the cook's, and one I didn't recognize. An older silver sedan sat parked near the edge of the lot facing the highway. Its windows were tinted dark, and with the rain and the dim lot lights, I couldn't see if anyone was inside. I didn't think much of it. It's probably a customer from earlier who hadn't left yet. I got in my car, started the engine, and pulled out onto the highway. It was a straight 20-minute drive home, nothing but forest on either side. About 5 minutes in, a warning light blinked on my dashboard. Low tire pressure. I frowned, glancing at the screen rear passenger tire. The number was dropping fast. "Great," I muttered, pulling over onto the shoulder. The rain was picking up, and I didn't have the first clue how to change a tire. I stepped out, crouched beside the car, and sure enough, the tire was completely flat, hissing faintly through a small slash across the rubber. That's when I saw headlights. A car slowed behind me, pulling off the road. I shielded my eyes as the lights dimmed. The driver's door opened, and my heart dropped when I saw who it was. It was the same man from the diner, the one with the mustache. He waved like we were old friends. "Hey, you okay?" I tried to sound calm. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just a flat." He stepped closer, holding his hands up like he wanted to help. "You sure? I can change that for you." No trouble. It was hard to tell in the dark, but I swear he was wearing gloves now. Something in my gut screamed asterisk, no asterisk. "I've already called someone," I lied. "A boyfriend's on the way." He stopped walking, his smile fading just slightly. "Boyfriend, huh?" I nodded, gripping my phone tightly. He stood there for a moment, just staring. Then he looked down the road and muttered, "Road like this isn't safe. People disappear out here all the time." He gave a small laugh, but I didn't. I mumbled something about the police being on their way, hoping it would make him leave. Instead, he leaned a little closer, lowering his voice. "You sure you don't need help? I'd hate for something bad to happen while you're all alone out here." That line sent a chill through me. I didn't respond. I just got back in my car, locked the doors, and kept my phone in my lap. My hands were shaking as I tried to talk to the 911 operator quietly enough that he wouldn't tee here. "Ma'am, can you describe the vehicle?" the operator asked. Before I could answer, there was a loud crack like glass shattering. The passenger side window exploded inward. I screamed and hit the horn instinctively. Through the rain and broken glass, I saw him standing there, his expression twisted not, smiling anymore. He reached through the window, not to grab me, but to snatch my phone. Then he hurled it down the road into the darkness and ran back to his car. He sped off, taillights vanishing into the rain. I sat there frozen, shaking, listening to my own heartbeat and the storm outside. 10 of the longest minutes of my life passed before I saw red and blue lights flashing through the mist. When the police arrived, they found my phone shattered near the guardrail. I gave them the man's description, his car, and the direction he went. They changed my tire and escorted me home. A few days later, an officer called to tell me they had checked the diner's security footage. The man had given a fake name on his credit card. The number was stolen. They never found him. I quit that job the next day. Now, whenever I drive that highway at night, I still find myself glancing into the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a pair of headlights following just a little too closely. Thanks for listening. This happened when I was 15, been a year, but I still can't walk through a crowd without scanning every single face just in case. I used to have a part-time job at this small amusement park in upstate New York. It wasn't one of those massive, sprawling places. It was more like a local gem with a couple of roller coasters, the usual food stands, and this old, squeaky Ferris wheel that seriously looked older than my parents. It was mid-October, one of the last weekends before the park shut down for the winter. You know that kind of air? It's the kind that S so crisp and cold it feels like it, S, hinting that snow is just around the corner. The trees surrounding the park were mostly bare, their branches like skeletal fingers against the gray sky. My job was at a little booth selling popcorn, cotton candy, and sodas. It was a pretty chill gig. My shifts usually started early and wrapped up before sunset. But on this particular day, I'd volunteered to stay late because one of the older workers had called in sick. Fast forward to 4:55 p.m., and I was absolutely exhausted. Just counting down those final few minutes until I could finally clock out and go home. And that's when he showed up. He looked like he was in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. He had this messy brown hair, a patchy beard, and his eyes. They just looked sunken, tired, and kind of empty. He was wearing a gray t-shirt with some mystery stains on it, and black sweatpants that were riddled with holes. His shoes were caked in mud, as if he'd been walking for miles through a forest or something. He stopped right in front of my booth and just stared. He didn't say a word for a few seconds, which felt like an eternity. His gaze was just fixed on me. Finally, I mustered up my best customer service voice and asked, "Can I help you, sir?" He glanced around nervously, almost like he was checking if anyone was watching before leaning closer to the counter. His voice was low and raspy when he spoke. Where are your bathrooms?" I pointed toward a small hill just past the main rides. "Up that way, to the right." He gave a slow nod but didn't move. He just kept looking at me with those unsettling eyes. It felt like another minute passed before he finally turned and started walking toward the hill. But what really creeped me out was that he glanced back at me twice as he walked away. I remember letting out this shaky breath I didn't even realize I was holding. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was just tired, maybe a little paranoid from the long day. But there was something about that man, something in his stare that made my skin crawl. A few minutes later, my coworker Jordan came by to take over my spot so I could clock out. I was so relieved. I packed my things, grabbed my backpack, and headed to the locker area behind the food stands to change. By this point, the park was getting ready to close, and most of the crowd had already filtered out. The only sound was the distant, soft music from the carousel, which sounded kind of eerie and distorted as it carried on the chilly wind. After changing out of my uniform, I walked over to the employee parking lot. Jordan had offered me a ride home, so I was just going to wait for him there. The lot was almost completely empty, just a handful of cars scattered under these flickering, dull yellow lights. I found a bench and sat down, scrolling through my phone to pass the time and trying my best to shake off that weird feeling that I was being watched. It was probably just the shadows playing tricks on me, but every time I looked up, the darkness between the cars seemed to shift and move. After what felt like forever, Jordan finally pulled up in his beat-up old Honda. "Sorry, man," he said as I got in. The lines were long, closing up my ride station. I just nodded, buckling up, "It's fine," I replied, my voice probably sounding more strained than I intended. "I just want to get home." We were both starving, so we decided to grab dinner at a diner on the way back. It was this little place we always went to after a late shift. It had this cool, retro 80s vibe, checkered floors, bright red booths, and a jukebox in the corner that, ironically, never worked. I ordered a cheeseburger and Jordan got pancakes, because he was weird like that, and ate breakfast for dinner. We were about halfway through our meal, just chatting and unwinding, when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. I felt a cold knot twist in my gut. Across the diner, sitting just 2 tables away from us, was the same man from the park. He was sitting all by himself, with no food or drink in front of him, just a glass of water, and he was staring right at me, not even blinking. At first, I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. Maybe it was just a guy who looked like him. A coincidence? But then the waitress walked by his table, and his eyes flickered to follow her for a second before they locked right back onto me. That's when I knew it was him. I leaned across the table and whispered to Jordan, "That guy. Over there? He was at the park earlier." Jordan turned his head casually, trying not to be obvious, then looked back at me and shrugged. "Probably just a coincidence, dude. Don't worry about it." "Yeah," I said, trying to sound calm and believe him. But deep down, I knew it wasn't a coincidence. Couldn't be. I spent the rest of the meal trying my best to avoid eye contact, keeping my head down and focusing on my food. When we finally paid and left, I felt this overwhelming wave of relief wash over me until we got back into the car. We were driving for about 5 minutes when we stopped at a red light. I happened to glance to my right, at the car in the lane next to us. I froze. It was a white sedan, and behind the wheel was that same man. It's time. He didn't even try to pretend he wasn't looking. He just slowly turned his head toward me and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was cold and sinister. My throat tightened up. I could barely get the words out. "Jordan," I said, my voice just a quiet whisper. "He's next to us." Jordan looked over and I saw all the color drain from his face. Holy, okay, maybe he's just going the same way. But his voice was trembling too. The light turned green. Jordan slammed on the gas, a little too hard. The man did too. He pulled in right behind us, his headlights so close they felt like they were burning into our back window. We made a right turn. He followed. Took a quick left onto a side street. He followed. Even looped through a quiet residential street, trying to lose him. He stayed right on our tail. Every single turn he was there. "Go past my house," I said, my heart pounding against my ribs. "Just keep driving." We circled my neighborhood 3 separate times, our eyes glued to the rearview mirror. Finally, on the 3rd loop, as we made our turn, the white car just kept going straight and disappeared down the road. We pulled over and sat there for a full minute, both of us just breathing heavily, the silence in the car deafening. "You good?" Jordan finally asked. "I think so," I lied. I was nowhere near good. He dropped me off a few minutes later. My mom and sister were out shopping, and my dad was away on a business trip, so the house was completely dark and empty. I fumbled with my keys, rushed inside, and locked the door, triple-checking it. I turned on every single light in the house, from the porch light to the upstairs bathroom, and went straight to my room, hoping the brightness would offer some sort of protection. I was sitting on my bed, scrolling aimlessly on my phone, trying desperately to distract myself from the night's events when I heard it. A soft asterisk, tap asterisk against my bedroom window. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing up. Then, another asterisk, tap asterisk. My heart was hammering in my chest. With a shaking hand, I slowly pulled the curtain back, just an inch, just enough to see. And there he was, standing on my lawn, smiling that same horrible smile. It was the man from the park, his face half illuminated by the porch light, making him look even more menacing. I jumped back from the window as if I'd been burned, grabbed my phone with trembling hands, dialed 911. My voice was shaking so much I could barely explain to the operator what was happening. She was amazing. She told me to stay on the line, stay inside, and keep talking to her until the police arrived. It felt like an eternity, but soon I heard the faint sound of sirens growing louder and louder as they raced down my street. But by the time they arrived, he was gone, vanished. There were no footprints on the damp lawn, no car in sight, nothing. The officers did a thorough search of the area, but found no trace of him. They advised me to keep my windows and doors locked and to call immediately if he returned. That night, I didn't sleep a wink. I just sat up in my bed, staring at the curtains, my ears straining for any sound, waiting for another tap. The park closed for the season a few days after that, and I quit my job before it reopened in the spring. I couldn't go back there, even now. Sometimes when I pass that diner on the way to school, I can't help but look through the window, half expecting to see him sitting in that same booth, just staring. I still don't know who he was or what he wanted. Maybe he was just some drifter passing through. Maybe he was something much, much worse. But to this day, every time I'm driving and see a white car behind me in the rearview mirror, even for just a second, my heart still races, and I get that same cold feeling in my stomach, because I know I'll never forget that smile outside my window. Thanks for listening to my story. It's a bit heavy, I know, but it's something I needed to share. If you have any stories of your own, I'd love to hear them in the comments. I used to work the late shift at a diner just outside a small town in Oregon. It was one of those classic spot stand booths, a counter, and a few old neon signs that flickered like they were about to give up. Most nights were slow, especially when it rained, and that night it was pouring. The sound of the rain hitting the windows was the only thing louder than the hum of the fridge. It was usually peaceful, quiet nights like that. Could clean up, take it easy, and get out on time. But around 11:45 p.m., the bell on the door jingled. A couple walked in. The man looked to be in his late 30s, well-dressed, slicked back hair, expensive watch. The woman with him was much younger, maybe in her mid-20s, and she looked incredibly nervous. Her eyes darted around the diner like she was looking for an escape route. "Just two tonight?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful. He smiled, a polite but cold smile. "Yeah, thanks." I led them to a booth by the window. He strategically took the seat facing the door while she sat across from him, clutching her purse with both hands. They looked over the menus for a bit. I went back to take their order. The woman barely spoke. It was the man who ordered for both of them steak and eggs for himself, and just a small salad for her. As I walked away, this weird feeling settled in my stomach. Something was off. She hadn't looked at him once since they sat down. He, on the other hand, never took his eyes off her, smiling in a way that felt forced, like he was playing a part. While their food was cooking, he started making small talk with me. He asked about my job, how long I'd been there, where I lived. I've worked in service long enough to know when a customer is crossing a line. But there was something about his tone that made my skin crawl. Then he asked, "Do you live alone?" Without even thinking, I said, "Yeah, just me." He smiled again. "Must be peaceful. No one to bother you." At that exact moment, the woman looked up and I saw it in her eyes. Pure fear. It was just for a second, but it was unmistakable. I immediately changed the subject. "It's quiet, yeah. Gets a little boring sometimes." He chuckled. "Sure." When their food was ready, I served them and tried to stay busy behind the counter. I could still hear the low murmur of their voices, soft but tense. Every now and then, I'd catch her glancing toward the door, like she was just waiting for a chance to run. About 45 minutes later, they were ready to leave. The man paid, smiled, and thanked me again. The woman just followed him out, her head down, never making eye contact. But something about her haunted me long after they were gone. By midnight, I had closed up shop, cleaned everything, and locked the doors. The rain had turned into a full-on downpour. My car was parked right out front, so I made a run for it, started the engine, and headed home. I lived about 10 minutes away, in a small first-floor apartment in a converted house. It wasn't fancy, but it was cheap and usually quiet. The house had 3 units, one above me, one below, and mine in the middle. When I pulled into the driveway, it was empty. The other tenants must have been out for the night. I unlocked my door, threw my keys on the counter, and kicked off my wet shoes. The rain was still hammering against the windows, and I was finally ready to relax. And then I heard it. A knock on the door? It wasn't a friendly knock. It was frantic, desperate. I froze. The knocking came again, rapid, urgent. I crept to the door. I have 2 doors, a glass storm door and a solid wooden one. I peeked through the glass, and I saw a woman standing there, completely soaked, her hood pulled up over her head. It was the same woman from the diner. "Please," she sobbed through the glass, her voice trembling. "Please let me in. Just need to use your phone." For a second, I couldn't move. My gut was screaming that this was a bad idea, but her eyes. She looked absolutely terrified. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She glanced nervously behind her toward the street, then back at me. "There's a man. He's following me. Just let me call someone." The rain was pouring down around her, and her voice cracked with desperation. Against my better judgment, I reached for the lock. But then I stopped. I recognized her face completely now. It was definitely the woman from the diner. My stomach dropped. "Wait," I said. "Weren't you just at the diner an hour ago?" She didn't answer. She just kept looking over her shoulder, breathing heavily. "Please, he's coming!" And then she screamed, "There he is!" and pointed toward the road. I looked past her and saw him. A man walking slowly toward my house, holding an umbrella, moving with this eerie calm, as if the storm didn't bother him at all. Even in the shadows, I recognized his silhouette. It was the man from the diner. He stopped at the edge of my yard, just staring straight at us. "Please open the door," she begged, banging on the glass now. But every instinct in my body was screaming at me not to. I didn't know if she was in real danger, or if this was all some twisted setup. I took a step back. "I'm calling the police," I said firmly. The man started walking faster. I slammed the inner door shut, locked both deadbolts, and backed away as fast as I could. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped my phone. I dialed 911 and whispered that someone was trying to break into my house. Before the operator could even respond, I heard the woman's voice again, muffled through the door. "Please, he's right there." And then, complete silence. When I finally got the courage to look through the window again, they were both gone. The yard was empty. The only sound was the rain. I should have left right then, driven to my parents' house, a friend's, anywhere but there. But I told myself maybe it was over. Maybe they left. I tried to go about my night, brush my teeth, change my clothes, pretend everything was normal. About 15 minutes later, I heard it again, a soft knock. But this time, it came from inside. From the hallway that connected the apartments through a shared stairwell, I froze solid. The door to that hallway was always locked. No one should have been able to get in. The knocking came again, soft and deliberate. I forced myself to speak. "Who's there?" No answer. I called out the names of my neighbors. Nothing. Then, a voice. Low, calm, male. "Your blood on me." Those 4 words sent a wave of ice through my veins. I bolted to my bedroom, locked the door, and dove into the closet, still clutching my phone. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. The 911 operator stayed on the line with me until the police arrived. The officers swept the entire house, the yard, the whole area. They found nothing. No one was there. But when one of the officers checked the hallway door, he noticed something. A faint red smear on the wood right near the handle. It looked like paint or maybe a marker. They told me to go stay somewhere else for the night. The next morning, my upstairs neighbor knocked on my actual door. He asked if I knew what the message on the hallway door meant. I stepped out into the hall and I froze. Written in black marker, right across the door to my apartment, were the words, "Thanks for the service, Beth. That's my name. I moved out 2 weeks later." To this day, I have no idea what they wanted, or if that girl was ever in any real danger. But now, every time it rains at night, every time I hear a knock on my door, I couldn't help but see her terrified face in the storm and the man walking slowly out of the darkness right behind her. Thank you for listening to my story. If you found this as unsettling as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Stay safe out there.